Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us again today. Well, today we're going to be having a look at the latest from Sig Sauer P365 line, and that is the Fuse, short for Fusion. They're talking about bringing you lots of capability along with concealment. So have they done that? Have they made something that is revolutionary, or are they kind of moving in the wrong direction as far as making the gun bigger? Well, we're going to look at all the features and try to answer those questions and many more in just a minute. Alright, once again, welcome back. Thanks for being with us today. If this is your first time coming to the channel, or if you've watched our videos before and just haven't had the chance before now and you like our content, please consider subscribing. You can locate that subscribe button in the lower right hand corner of your computer screen there, or if you're on a mobile device, you can scroll down below the video and hit subscribe that way. It's a simple thing that helps out a whole lot, and we really appreciate it. So, P365 Fuse. So when I first saw this gun, the first thought that went into my head was that, well, I kind of like 365. I've got a few of them, but it seems like in the area of concealment, we're kind of moving in the wrong direction. Now, that's just my initial thoughts. I'm not saying it's not a good option, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. So, if we take the pistol here and we put it down, I'm going to get a regular 365. This one happens to be my Romeo Zero. So when I put the little Romeo Zero here next to the Fuse, obviously it's a much, much larger gun. Now granted, there are some things that we know are responsible for that in the way of, it's got a bigger frame and longer barrel and slide. It has larger capacity. We're talking about 12 plus 1 versus 17 plus 1 with the standard mag, and even more than that with the extended mags, which we'll get into. But just looking at them in their smallest footprint, this is a much larger gun. As a matter of fact, it's big enough to me that although being thinner, if you look at the outside dimensions, it is not that far off in the world of something like a Glock 19, which is what I have here. Now, remember what I said. It's definitely going to be thinner, and also, like, for example, the total thickness of the grip across from front to back. Now, you can change those out on this, which I'll get to in the features section. But, initially looking at them, you can see that obviously the 365 is thinner than the Glock 19. But it is just as long. And if you look at it down the sight picture, look at the grip, it's thinner, but it's kind of like that size has been spread out a bit. And it ends up having a pretty good size outer footprint. For me, when I'm thinking about a gun that's going to be a concealed carry gun, that's definitely something I'm going to have to think about, because I like the 365s, and I like the concealability you generally get, but this is a lot bigger than what I would have thought they would have done with this model. Alright, well, let's go ahead and jump into the features here, but before we do, we want to take just a moment to thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of the Sig Sauer P365 Fuse for our tabletop review today. Don's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearm safety and education, and we cannot thank them enough. So, we're going to we'll get our mag out here. We'll do a quick safety check for you here. Let's see everything is good. And you can see that the firearm is clear. We're just as safe as we can be. Now, let's just start for a moment with that magazine that I removed. So, take a look there. You can see that's a 17-round magazine. Now, when we're talking about the grip, the difference in size, obviously, over a standard 365, you're going to expect this because of the difference in capacity. This is a little 12-round magazine that's in that regular 365. Obviously, they're going for a much larger capacity, and you got to have some place to put it. Well, that's the grip. So I get that, and I'm okay with that. Now, you have another option, too, and that is they give you two of these 21-round extended magazines. And I'm very pleased that they give you 2 of these. I think this makes a nice package. But keep in mind, when you have that larger magazine in there, you've made the gun yet even larger. Once again, I like this firearm. I like the idea of having extended magazines. But if you're going to carry this firearm, you've already made it longer. And then when it's in the holster, you got to remember, oftentimes the grip is where your comfort issues are going to come in, where it touches the body. And by the time you add this magazine, this is something else you're going to have to manage. Not saying it's a deal breaker or something that you can't do, but it's definitely something you have to think about if you're considering this as a carry gun. So let's do like we normally do as far as features and kind of go from the top down here. You see there's a optics plate there, and so you've got some options for using a red dot if that's what you want to do. You've got a fiber optic front sight. I think that's good. You've heard me mention before that if you're going to have a sight, I want it to at least be something high visibility like fiber optic or a night sight. And so this is fine with me. I think this is great. Plus, of course, you can change this out to different colors if that's what you want to do. You've got some pretty decent serrations in the slide here, so it's easy to manipulate even with gloves on. You've got a accessory rail, so if you want to use a light on this handgun, you can certainly do that. You've got the good sized trigger guard. That's one thing I do like, is that even though this is supposed to be a smaller platform altogether, it does have a good sized trigger guard, and I do like that because I've got longer fingers and I don't like to have to work to find the trigger. And of course you've got the flat trigger here, and I've used this trigger on a number of these 365s, including the Romeo Zero. We'll talk about that more in the range section, but overall I have been pretty pleased with this trigger, but we'll talk about that, like I say, again just in a little bit. So you have your slide lock and release. Keep in mind this is just on the left hand side. You've got your disassembly lever here. You have to pull the slide back, you rotate that down, and then you can pull the slide forward. Of course, from there, you've got your rod and your spring. Once those are out, you can tip your barrel out. So it's very easy to do your basic cleaning maintenance on the firearm. Magazine release. This works pretty well. Now, it's in a location that I don't find to be an issue. They've got a little rise. If you look here real close, you can see there's a little curb kind of behind the magazine release there, which is just enough to keep your finger from accidentally hitting it. And when you mash it, it is a pretty deliberate release of the magazine, but it is pretty flat compared to the rest of the grip. So I do have to be purposeful in pressing this button because it doesn't stick out very far. You've got your grip. I like the grip pattern a lot on this. I think it feels really good. And they've given you some flexibility by giving you additional back straps here, so you've got 3 different sizes in total to try to accommodate for your, whether you like a larger grip or a smaller grip. I think that's great. Overall, I think it's a good design. I like the way they've got the mag well done here. It's a little bit easier to get your magazines in and out. I don't have to have something like that, but I think it's a nice add-on. So, looking at it overall, I think it's a nice looking firearm that has a decent feature set on it. And if you are wanting something that's going to handle a little bit better than a micro size pistol, well, of course, you can already see with the bigger barrel, larger frame, you're going to have that. So that's going to be your basic overview of the features. All right, well, let's talk about the range, because after all, if they've made it bigger, if it's got a larger frame and longer barrel and bigger slide, then I'm kind of expecting some better performance out of it than I would a smaller handgun. And I'm happy to report that that's exactly what you get. So let's talk about that for a minute. So once again, let's just see that we're clear before we get into this part right here. But the trigger, let's talk about that for a second. I mentioned that I like the flat trigger they've been using on these 365s. And if you look, you've got a pretty deliberate and not too long area of take up here before you start getting into the actual resistance. Now watch this. So I come in, and then once you get the pressure in it, it's got just a small travel before it breaks right there. So reset. You know, it's not a short reset, but it's not bad. And then once again, you get into the pressure of it. And then once again, reset. So it's a weird, this trigger feels interesting. It's like some triggers, when you pull them, they feel like it's a snap. You know, some, they're like a glass break, a very deliberate snap. And this, for lack of a better word, it's more of a clunk. It's a thud. It's very repeatable. It's something you get used to very easily, but it has a different feel. It's not quite a snap so much as you can feel it just bottoming out after it breaks. So having said that, it doesn't take long to get used to the trigger on this. Having shot this many times before on the other models I have with this same trigger, I can tell you, you get used to it very quickly. You've got that area of take up, like I said, you get into it, and then boom, back. So they've gotten pretty good at making this trigger very consistent and reliable through all the models that they are using it in. So as far as ammo, now none of the 365s that I've used have had an issue yet. Pretty much anything standard range ammo is going to be fine as far as I can see. I always like to use a few particular types of defensive ammo in my tests. Like I say, I like the Sig V Crown, the 115, the 124. I always like to run these through my carry guns, and I always like to run the Spear Gold Dot here, the 124 grain. And if I've got something else, like I tried some of this 135 Critical Duty, and it did pretty good as well. Overall, as is many times, my best results were achieved with the 115 grain V Crown. And when I say the best results, this is my results. You know, if I load magazines with different types of ammunition, I put rounds on paper. No particular order of how they're shot. Whatever groups I get most consistently, and that's after I've warmed up. That's usually the one that we'll be talking about. In this case, the 115, as many times before, is the most accurate round for me. They make many other good rounds out there, so there's lots of choices. Keep in mind, if you carry the larger magazine, you know, the 21 here versus the 17, it doesn't seem like a lot, but you're going to notice the difference in the weight. You know, those extra rounds, you will know that they're in there, and that's one thing you have to consider if this is going to be your carry gun. For me, I probably would carry this with the standard magazine all the time and just have these available to get to if I needed them. If I was in some unfortunate situation where one magazine wasn't going to get me out of trouble, I'd want these nearby. But I don't think I'd want to carry it with that larger magazine. And of course, the ultimate question is, you've already got 18 rounds between the magazine and the gun. And if I'm in more than 18 rounds worth of trouble, then, you know, I don't know if 21's going to do it either. So anyway, pretty good performer overall. Consistent, not picky with ammo, but it's a lot easier to get good groups with this longer barrel and bigger frame. It's a little more stable than the smaller version, and that's a big plus I will give it. So what's it like to carry the P365 Fuse on you as a carry gun? Well, I tried a few different options with this. I've got a few generic holsters, you know, Galco leather that'll work, and I've got a few other holsters that I use for this type of gun to try to minimize the holster footprint whenever I've got a little bit more gun that I would typically want to carry. Now, I've got this little TX4 holster here I've used for a lot of micro style guns. I've got a lot of different ones that'll fit it, and I was pretty comfortable carrying with this little holster right here. It's a single clip. Now, I don't think I would do this with the larger magazine, but once again, I probably wouldn't carry it with this anyway. When I carry this way, I'm already putting a lot of the gun up against my body because this is a minimal, holster to fit the gun. I think ideally, if I was going to carry this, I would probably get something like a crossbreed or an Alienware, any one of a number of holsters that has a full, leather pad on the back, and maybe Kydex. I don't have one specifically made for this model. I will, but I just wanted to see what it was like to manage the weight and the size of the firearm. And, it wasn't bad. But you have to remember something. By the time you carry a gun like this, even though it's a thinner gun than, say, the Glock 19, we're still talking about 18 rounds of 9mm inside the gun. It's heavy. And so the starting weight, if you pick up a Glock 19 and you compare the weight of a Glock 19 versus this 365 fuse, the Glock definitely, is a bit heavier empty. But once again, once you get the ammunition in it, your total weight, you're going to notice that you're carrying a gun that feels a lot denser and heavier than it did when you were just simply comparing how thin and compact it looks. So I was able to achieve a pretty comfortable daily carry with the gun, but it's like I say, it's a little bit more than what I would carry anyway. When the 365 came out, one of the things I liked about it was that they had come up with a very small package, and that small package had a good trigger and what I consider decent capacity. It's not the best in the world, but for a gun this size, if I've got 13 total rounds, I feel like that this is a pretty good solution for self-defense. And yes, adding more rounds is great, but I've really added a lot to the firearm. So it is more difficult to carry just because it's, once again, a larger gun. We're getting into that category where if I'm going to carry this, I'm almost inclined to just carry my Glock 19, just because I have the benefits of it being a lot easier overall for me to manage because it's a little bit bigger gun. But you can comfortably carry it if you have the right holster. I'm going to do a follow-up on this whenever I get my good holster in, and I'll give some more information. But I don't think it's a bad gun to carry on a daily basis. But like I say, once again, for me, they're kind of going in the wrong direction as far as making the gun bigger. If they're going to innovate this gun, in my opinion, let's just make it as reliable as we can. Maybe continue to improve the trigger, things like that. But as far as making the gun bigger, if we're going to do that, we may as well just get out of the 365 and go into something bigger that's already available. But not a bad gun overall. Overall impressions of the P365 fuse. Well, I've kind of said it all, but just in summary, the 365 is a gun that I was pretty excited about when it first came out. And I'm not saying that has changed. I still think the 365 is a great gun, and they have a lot of good variants to this gun. But just for me personally, to make the gun this much bigger, we're talking about a gun that, talk about going from a micro compact, and then we're kind of moving the gun back into a compact range. No matter what they call it or how they categorize it, that's what you're really doing here. A gun like this, because I have versions of this without the optic, this is a gun I can pocket carry. I can put this inside a sticky holster or something and drop it right in my pocket, and it just looks like I'm carrying a wallet there. You can't do that with this. Now, once again, yes, you're gaining a lot of capacity with this gun, but you're also gaining a bigger gun. And it's a big enough difference between what I consider a good carry gun that it's kind of a different category altogether as far as I'm concerned. Now, I think Sig's done a great job with the amount of diverse models that they're offering in the series. And for some people, this might be perfect, especially if they're someone who tends to want to carry a compact gun, but they want something just a little bit thinner and lighter. Well, you may like this because, you get more rounds than a Glock 19, and it's a little bit thinner. But you're still carrying a gun that has an overall pretty large footprint. So that needs to be what you want, I think, or else you're not going to be happy. I think they're going to continue to give us good versions of the gun, so I think this is a good offering by Sig. Once again, it's a little bit bigger than what I would carry, but there are many other larger guns that people carry every day, and who am I to tell you what to carry for your carry gun? That's not the point of this. I'm just letting you know that if you're used to the 365 and how they feel, this is going to be a bit of a surprise. But not a bad gun overall, just a big for me, and I think that's going to do it. So we appreciate you being with us as always. We'll be back soon with another video for you. So until that time, as always, everybody stay safe and have a great day. Thank you.